mean, I think this is such an important key to this game. Obviously, you're going to talk about, oh, the defense has got to stop the offense and all that. Notre Dame's offense is really, to me, going to determine whether or not Notre Dame can win this game on Saturday.
No doubt.
Because the defense could play great, hold Caleb Williams to 27 points and lose.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like the Oregon State game where they held them to 17 points, that was an anomaly. That's not really the recipe to beating them. That was on the road. It's just one of those days where you just kind of did what you needed to do. Notre Dame's a little banged up on defense, right? So you're going to have to protect them. Look, the defense has been carrying this team all year. Again, this is one of those games where the defense needs the offense to, hey, we need you to have our back in this game, and we're going to find out if the offense is capable of doing it. I mean, the offense did what it needed to do against Clemson and all that, but look, the Notre Dame defense didn't give up a touchdown until like the game was over. I mean, it was already 21-0 by the time Clemson finally got on the board. So that was more, and one of those touchdowns that they had was an 11-yard drive. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where the defense could play really, really well and still give up close to 30 points in this game. Notre Dame's offense is going to have to do their job. They're going to have to carry their weight. And it doesn't mean controlling the clock, because you can control the clock and not have a lot of points.
Right.
It means moving the football and scoring touchdowns. If that means it's a 15-play, 75-yard drive, great. If it's a 3-play, 75-yard drive, great. You need points.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the big key. And those will be where a lot of what our specific keys to victory will come from.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And I have a lot of faith in what the defense is going to be able to do, but USC's offense is going to score. I mean, they're going to score. So anybody that is going in thinking that, Notre Dame's got a shot at pitching a shootout and all those different things, welcome to the Big 12/Pac-12, right? You're not going to pitch a shutout. That shouldn't be your goal, right? So a lot of this is going to hinge on the offense. The offense, like you said, I love that. It's not necessarily controlling the clock, it's scoring. And Notre Dame is coming off a game where they scored on their first 8 possessions.
Sure.
If they do something similar to that, then I have a lot of faith that Notre Dame is going to be able to have a lot of success in this game, right? But they need to score. They cannot have empty possessions. And to be honest with you, even if they're scoring field goals, they're scoring. Obviously, you don't want all field goals. I mean, you guys understand what I'm saying. They had 5 touchdowns and 3 field goals in the last game, and it was fine. You just need to score. You need to score, right? Because that takes some air out of the balloon. It puts more pressure on the USC offense that they need to score as well. So, this whole thing hinges on the offense, in my opinion. The whole thing.
Right. So let's go key number 1, Vince. I mean, look, we know what that's going to be. Anyone who watches this show, and Vince does watch this show when he's not on it, that everyone knows what key number 1 is. And it's always the same key, and it's for different reasons every time. This week, it's the same one. You got to start fast. And it's similar to where we were at Clemson. It's similar to Ohio State. It's similar to a lot of the games where you're playing high potent offenses early. North Carolina, you've got to start fast by either one of 2 things is going to happen. Your defense is struggling to get up to the game speed, especially after the last 2 weeks where you've played 2 teams that BC's not good. They're not a tempo team. They're a pro style. They don't run a lot of plays either. The week before that, you're playing Navy, who is a ball control, triple option team. Right. It's been a minute since you've seen an offense like this, right? Now, Notre Dame has done really well in the past against this type of offense, but it's been a minute since you've seen this. So there's a chance the defense could come out and take a while to get up to the speed of the game, especially if there's some guys out or some guys banged up or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I'm tell you what, man, this is driving me nuts.
Don't people know we're on the show right
Seriously.
now? Seriously. They know we're live?
Yeah, and I got to turn my phone off. It's never been an issue until like this last week and a half. So, you talk about starting fast, Vince. If the defense is struggling early, you've got to match points. Yes. Absolutely. Reminds me a lot of the 2020 North Carolina game. If you remember, everybody talks about how great the defense was that game. They held Carolina to 17 points and didn't let them get to 300 yards and all that kind of stuff. That's not how that game started. That game started with North Carolina going right down the field and scoring twice.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's offense the first time did not get points. If you remember, Ian Book took a sack, but then after that, Ian Book in the run game went right down the field, and they were able to match those points. The defense finally settled in, was able to start making stops, and then the offense was able to then, give them a lead. That's key number one, right? The other flip side is the USC offense has trouble against the Notre Dame defense because they haven't faced a team this well coached defensively in a while. They haven't faced a team with this kind of speed on defense in a while. They haven't faced a team with this kind of physicality on defense in a while. And that's just this good on defense. The Pac-12 is not good on defense. And the only team the only two really good defenses, in my opinion, Vince, and you may disagree with this, the only two good defenses in the Pac-12 for me is Oregon and Oregon State. That's it. That's it. I don't think there's any other good defenses in the Pac-12. And some people point to Utah. I don't think Utah's that good on defense. I really don't. And I've been saying this all year.
Physical, but that doesn't make them a good
Not
defense.
really anymore, though. I don't think. I don't think anyway.
I haven't watched a lot of Utah this year.
They used to be, Vince. They used to be like that. They used to be really good on defense. They used to be really physical and big and all that. Right. And I just don't think this version of Utah is. I think they beat up on teams that are not very good. They gave up 29 to Florida, which is a lot for Florida. They moved the ball on. They held Southern Utah to 7, San Diego State to 7. They're not very good. They held Arizona State to 13, Oregon State to 16. That was a good performance. 17 to Washington State. They're not a great offense. Arizona had 20, Stanford had 17. And then they did a good job against Oregon last week. But I thought that was more about Oregon making mistakes. Yeah. They gave up 42 to UCLA, and they gave up 42 to USC. Really the only two of the only three great offenses they played this year, right? But to me, it's Oregon and Oregon State. And when I look at USC and I look at what kind of they did is they just haven't faced a defense like this. So let's say Notre Dame comes out and plays well early, right? Because those are the two options. I already laid the scenario for if Notre Dame struggles to stop USC. The second scenario is if USC struggles with the speed of Notre Dame. What you have to do if you're the Irish offense is you've got to put some distance early. If your defense is getting stops early, you've got to put that ball in the end zone and get some distance because you're not going to keep USC down for 60 minutes. Yeah. Right. And with all due respect to that North Carolina 2020 team, Sam Howell's not Caleb Williams. Right. Those received De'Ami Brown is not Jordan Addison and Mario, this Mario Williams and Brendan Rice. I mean, it's a better team and it's a better offensive line. So to me, if you are going to start, if your defense does start fast, you got to put separation and put USC on their heels, put them in catch-up mode. So it's going to be a key, Vince, is you've got to start fast, quiet the crowd, get your crowd fired up because we always know there's a lot of Notre Dame fans to this game. Don't let the USC front runners get excited into this game. And then the other thing, too, is USC has not been hitting the mouth a lot. Right. I mean, just even UCLA, we talk about UCLA is a really physical football team. To a degree, they are. But if you watch UCLA, they're a lot of outside zone, buck sweep, that they're a lot of outs. I mean, they're a physical, they do like a lot of, fast swipe and wide stuff. They're not a 12 personnel, run it right down your freaking throat kind of offense, right? They're not that. They're physical, but there's that. And then there's what Notre Dame does, which is just a different brand of football. So you've got to come out and get a fast start because if you come out and hit USC in the mouth, but then they make a stop, they're going to be like, hey, we got this. It hurts a little, but we're good. But if you come out and hit them in the mouth and then just start just right down the field, bam, 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 all of a sudden doubt starts to step in, starts to seep in. And I think that's very important for Notre Dame. And Joel Klatt made an interesting comment on his show. And I don't know if I fully agree with him on this, but he said, if USC wins, it'll be close. If Notre Dame wins, it'll be a blowout.
Interesting. And
I understand where he's kind of coming from because USC hasn't played this kind of team. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing for USC because you could argue that it's been a while since Notre Dame's played this kind of team as well.
Sure.
Because Clemson's not this kind of offense anymore. They used to be, but they're not now. Right? So with all due respect
the closest thing is North Carolina.
That before, yes, recently. And then before that, obviously, Ohio State. Right. But the most recent is what Vince is referring to.
Yep.
Clemson is not that kind of offense anymore. They're just not. They don't have the receiver talent. They don't have the quarterback.
They don't have the quarterback either. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got to start fast offensively and create some doubt on that USC defense and really get them out of sync. And that means great game plan early from Tommy Rees is a must. He's got to figure out ways to get different players into the game. And he's got to come out early and get USC on their heels. We'll get specifics of how that is, but the game plan is going to be key. And then, of course, the players coming out and executing. But the game plan is going to be key.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's not just going to come out and line up and say, hey, we're going to run it down your throat. You're going to have to you're going to have to do some stuff schematically to put yourself in position to be successful.
But you can't, we're talking about the game plan. We're talking about the big picture, right? You cannot come out with a game plan of we need to milk the clock. You can't do that. You have to take advantage of any perceived mismatches that you have on offense to their defense. You have to. And if, like you said, if that means it's a 3-play 75-yard drive, so be it. Put those points on the board, man. Like, you can't think, okay, man, we need to run 3 plays to get a first down. We need to run the ball. We need to use all the clock. We need to huddle until there's 5 seconds, rush to the line. Is there a place for that? Is there a time and a place for that? Sure. It's not at the beginning of the game, in my opinion. It's not. You need to go out and you need to be, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but don't be in clock management mode right off the bat. That's not what I want to see from Notre Dame. Now, if you're just running it right down their throat and there's nothing that they're doing that's stopping it, then okay. That is a mismatch and you're utilizing that mismatch. That's fine. But I don't want to see them in the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, punting it away and not scoring. That's where I'm at with this.
I knew I was muted, but I have a habit of talking over people while they're going. So I just kind of love it. When I'm saying sure, yeah, it just forces me to like, okay, let them finish. I am trying to work on that.
I love it. Okay.
Let me push back a little bit on that, Vince, from the standpoint of you hit the second part of what you said, 100% agree with. The first part, I didn't. So like if your point is more the 3 yards in a cloud of dust and punt, 100% agree. And I thought that's what they were trying to do against Ohio State, right? Just run the clock. And if you don't get points, you don't get points.
Right.
Where I think I think this team is now is they can huddle, do what they need to do, and run some clock out because it's more of a part of who they are now, right? Mm-hmm. You get what I mean?
Sure.
Now, if your goal is to milk the clock, I'm not okay with that.
Right.
But I think the byproduct of who Notre Dame is can lead to that.
And that's fine.
And exactly. So that's a somewhat nuance. I think the second part of what you said, I feel like is more true to what you mean, which is this isn't a run the clock down game. This is be who you are, get down the field and score. And if that means you take 8 minutes off on a 15 play drive,
awesome.
Word.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also about creating big play opportunities if they're there and being efficient. So I think that's where I would say is if their first drive come out and they take 6 minutes off the clock and punch it in the end zone, cool.
Yep.
Right? Because I think the Clemson game plan was kind of that, right? Like they came out, they were huddling, they'd quickly line up late in the thing, quickly get shifts in motion, so that way Clemson couldn't figure out what they were doing, and they were able to gash them with it. I think that's a similar philosophy. Now, different scheme, different concepts to attack a different type of defense, but I think that a similar thing there could be good against a defense that takes a lot of risks, likes to move around, likes to play a lot of games, all those type of things. That's why I do think kind of lining up late. So as long as you know what you're doing and you're not doing the scan stuff, you're lining up. This is what we're calling. Bam, let's go. Boom. Then I can dig that.
I will say that to sum up everything that I said, I want him to be creative. Obviously, I want him to come out and I want him to go against tendency and I want him to do all those things that we've seen, right? Of course. But this game and these drives for me are 100% results driven.
Right.
I don't really care how you get there as long as you're crossing the goal line. That's what I care about. You need to score to keep pressure on USC's offense because I don't think that they've been in some shootouts and they've had some different, games where obviously they lost to Utah. They've been in some games where they're not the most comfortable at times, right? But you got to make them uncomfortable right away, in my opinion. Make this team uncomfortable right away. You need to dictate that from a full game perspective. And I think the way you do that is with your perceived weakness for this team, which is the offensive side of the ball. If you can go out and you go down and score, you put some pressure on that offense, that only puts your defense in a better spot. It's the complementary football piece of it for me.
So let's get into some specifics of what this looks like, what starting fast looks like, and then finishing looks like. And those are sort of the next keys, Vince. And the first one is sometimes we try to get nuanced and think outside the box with some of these keys. But in this game, and this is a segue from what you just said, Vince, you're going to win this game because you play Notre Dame football.
Right. Absolutely.
Simple as that.
You have to be who you are.
This isn't Ohio State,
Absolutely.
right? With all due respect to USC, they're not Ohio State, right? They're closer to North Carolina offensively than they are Ohio State at this point in time. Now, eventually they're going to be more like Ohio State. The longer Lincoln Riley stays, they're going to get there, especially if he actually chooses to actually start recruiting high school players at some point in time.
It'll be different.
So when I look at it, Vince, it's you got to play Notre Dame football. And that means you got to come out and you got to run the ball on them effectively. Now, what does that mean? It means, to me, at times mixing up your personnel. But with the way that USC pressures, this is a game to me where 12 personnel, 21 personnel, 22 personnel are things you can really have some success with. And if you want to go 13, fine. But it depends on the scenario and how you use it. I'm okay with 13 in certain looks because you want to create a wider surface at times for this run, for this defense, because they do so much twisting and stunting and so much of the inside pressures and the different things that they do.
Make them
you want to create a wider surface on certain edges, which then allows you more gaps to run through and then more opportunities where if you can catch them on sort of an inside stunt. This is what they did to Clemson. There was times where Clemson would bring those inside pressures, you seal that edge, and they're running duo and bouncing that sucker outside for 15, 20-yard gains.
Right.
Because they created those extra surfaces. Now, it needs to look a little different than it did against Clemson, but it's going to be very similar in what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah. Right now, at times you need to spread them out and do some things that way. Because then you can create some gash plays as well. That also means, to me, Vince, figuring out ways to get the ball outside. And I think one of the mistakes one of the things where UCLA wasn't quite as effective as they normally are against USC is because, again, they were like the whole first half, they're trying to run outside the whole time. It's like that kind of plays into USC's hands a little bit because they're you're trying to pin and pull and they're trying to quickly penetrate and pressure and you're giving up movement.
Yeah.
This is one of those games where I think duo can really have some success because you're not turning your shoulders and doing all those things and opening up run lanes. You're just bam, bam,
go.
And I think that's where, and again, duo, inside zone, counter, those type of things could be huge against Notre Dame. But you also have to be willing to say, we're going to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
The toss play. I remember Chip Long in 2018. And again, it's a different coordinator, but it's a similar philosophy. In 2018, Clemson basically, or USC was going to say, hey, we're not afraid of their pass game killing us. We're worried about their offensive line and run game killing us in 2018, right? So USC early in that game was flying downhill. I mean, the guard stepped right, they flew right. The guard stepped left, they flew left. And so USC comes out, they get a fast start on Notre Dame. They go up 10-0. Notre Dame's trying to come back. And we've talked about this play before, but they figured out that USC is keying the guards and whatever direction they're going, they're flying towards it. So Chip Long called a play where he faked buck sweep to the right. Both guards pulled and USC flew to it. You know what they ran? They just ran a simple sweep play to Dexter Williams to the left. You had one tight end out there. Cole Kmet makes his block. It's a touchdown, and he does. And Dexter Williams goes 50-plus yards because you got to jerk with their eyes a little bit, right? And so if you can mix up some of that stuff a little bit, a few jet sweeps, counter, a reverse, outside zone, a toss, something like that. You ran toss last week. Okay, run toss and then and then hand it off to Chris Tyree going back the other way on 21 personnel. Something like that. Yeah, there may be some risk to it, but if you hit it, USC is in trouble.
Yeah, it's going to be big.
So if you can figure out some ways where, hey, we know they really crash the edge hard on this look or they don't or whatever you think it works best, you got to have those tendencies down and be able to attack it because, yes, you're going to be a duo. I hope they're a duo inside zone team because when they mix up duo and inside zone like they did against BC, like they did against Clemson, this team is really hard to stop running the football.
Right.
When they get duo dominant, then in duo heavy, that's what we on our breakdown on Sunday night, Vince. It's like coming out running counter the first play of the game out of a look that's a very heavy duo look was huge.
It's brilliant,
right? And then
it just was
later you go inside zone out of a heavy duo look, and with the motions and all that, you're like, dude, he had them on their heels.
Yeah,
and you need to figure out ways to do similar things against USC. Now, specific to what USC does, it's not regurgitating the BC game plan. I don't want to see that because we've seen them do that before. Hey, it worked last week. Let's regurgitate it again. I don't want to see that, but I do want to see the mix up of the duo, the inside zone, the counters, but you've got to have some stuff outside. So I felt like UCLA tried to work outside in with their run game. Notre Dame needs to work inside out. I think that's the more effective way to run the football on USC. And so, but that's going to be a key, Vince. They've got to run the football effectively, because if you can punch them in the mouth and really set the tone early, you're going to have some success. Get them thinking like, boy, we got to really heat them up if we're going to have a shot, because then that's when you're going to have some things that we'll get to here in a little bit that could really be big. But if you can't establish the run game and figure out ways to just gash them with the run, Vince, it's going to be a long day for Notre Dame.
Well, and we've seen what happens to a USC team. Now, granted, it was a different USC team, but we see what happens to USC teams when you just run the ball and you punch them in the mouth and you get physical with them over and over. And it's not just USC. It's kind of a West Coast thing overall. They don't play physical smash mouth in your face football. That's who Notre Dame is, right? And that would be, if Marcus Freeman called me up one day and he was like, "Hey, what's your advice, man? Just be you. Like, be what got you here. Be you, man. Like, just go and run the football, punch them in the mouth, make them quit, man. Make those guys not want to get double teamed up front again. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you need to do. So you need to come out with that mentality. You need to take that mentality that you've had, and it needs to go cross country. After your big Thanksgiving meal tomorrow, it needs to travel. You've got, the next step for this team is for that mentality, that punch you in the mouth mentality, to travel with you 3 time zones, right? And a lot of eyeballs are going to be on this game. And people who have not seen Notre Dame, granted, they did it against Clemson at home, but people aren't looking at USC the way they look at Clemson. It's a different thing right now. People are saying USC is going to be in the Final Four, right? After they take care of business against Notre Dame. They're not saying that about Clemson. So Notre Dame has a big opportunity here. If they can go and they can take this mentality and just punch them in the mouth, that's huge. It's huge.
Clemson fans, there's a lot of pro Notre Dame fans out there this week. Oh, yeah. Right? LSU fans are rooting for Notre Dame if they're not idiots.
Brian Kelly's rooting for Notre Dame.
Which is kind of, okay, that's a question mark, because a lot of the ones we've experienced are. Clemson fans are definitely rooting for Notre Dame, because if you're those teams, you're like, man, if Notre Dame's got to come out and blow this team out, right? Like, they've got to blow, because if they blow out USC, and I'm not predicting that at all. I'm just making a point.
For sure.
And I didn't predict that they would blow Clemson out either, just like I didn't predict that they'd only beat Navy by 3. I mean, that's what I love about football. You just never know, right?
Right.
But if they do, hypothetically, where it's a convincing 17-point win, 42-24, something like that, that's what that'd be. That's 18. If it's 41-24, 17, 38-17, something like that, right? Yeah. Where it's just a convincing, wow, Notre Dame was clearly the better team. Then all of a sudden, Clemson can be like, see, they are really good. Yeah. Let's not forget that this was the preseason number 5 team in the country for a reason.
Right.
So that's kind of what those teams are going to be looking at. But the only way Notre Dame's going to be able to back that up and do that is if they play their game. That's the key. And what their game is, come out, hit them in the mouth, keep them guessing, get them on their heels with your physicality, get them on the heels with your movement, get them on the heels with your various personnel groupings. Don't just be 12-13 the entire flipping game.
Right. Understand
how good 21 personnel is to what you do. And I think if you can get USC kind of going like this while you're also going like this, it's going to be huge, man. And so I'm excited to see if they're able to do it. And I mean, they've done it 6 of the last 8 games. You got to hope that they can do it one more time. And then you get a rest for a month or so until you got to play again. But, and that's the other thing is USC's got a game next week.
Right.
They got another game next week.
And honestly,
this is it for Notre Dame.
They want to win a Pac-12 championship, right? And they're already in the Pac-12 championship. Right. So, now I don't think they're going to be looking past Notre Dame because they win.
You know why, Vince?
There's other things for them.
Because of the playoff.
Right.
That's why they're not overlooking Notre Dame.
Exactly.
Like if they were a 2-loss team, let's say they'd have lost early in the season to Stanford and all of a sudden, but they're still clinched. They've already got all the tiebreakers. They're still in the playoff, right? Which they would be actually. I mean, I believe because I think every team in the league would have 2 losses. Let's just say hypothetically that they're in. Okay.
Right.
With another loss, and they're not in the playoff hunt. maybe you could be thinking that they might overlook Notre Dame a little bit.
Sure.
Even then, I don't know if I'd buy it because it's the rivalry aspect. But here's where the transfer. But that's what I was going to say. Here's the transfer thing doesn't matter. Like, how many of these kids are really Like, did Jordan Addison come here because he just can't wait to play in the Notre Dame, US? No, he came here because he thinks being here is going to help. He's going to get NIL money and it's going to boost his draft stock. Like, well, dude, I hate to break it to you, but the numbers you put up at Pitt last year were way freaking better than what you're doing at USC this year. That's true. But it is what it is. But they're not invested in that part of it. It doesn't mean they don't want to win. It just means that they haven't experienced the rivalry before. And so please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying, well, they don't care about winning. If they didn't care about winning, they would be 10-1 right now.
Right.
I'm saying, like, it's not about like coming to Notre Dame where they were recruited by Notre Dame and USC and they liked both schools and they're both in the top 5, but they picked USC and they've been in this rivalry and they remember what happened to them last year against Notre Dame. And there's a lot of dudes that aren't that way. You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, sure. They're kind of
another game
done
at USC. Yeah. I mean, it is
right.
It is what it is.
So that's something Notre Dame's got to kind of take advantage of that. There is no tomorrow for you. This is it. Leave it all out there. You're banged up. I need you to get through one more game.
Yep.
Because you're going to get a month off, right? We're leaving it all out there this Saturday. And that goes for coaches too, Vince.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go to number 3. In a game like this, your stars have to be stars, but to win these games, your complementary players need to step up, Vince. Yeah. And yes, you need Michael Mayer to be Michael Mayer.
Yeah.
You need your running backs to do what they do. You need Logan to go off. You need Audric to go off. You need your stud tackles to play like studs. You need Jarrett Patterson to, hey, buddy, we're going back out west to your old stomping grounds. Let's get your last career game at home. Maybe the last career game for Jarrett Patterson, Michael Mayer. Who knows? Right? I mean, this
definitely
could be
possible.
Their last game, especially for Michael Mayer. Leave it all out there, man. But in a game like this, the difference a lot of times can be who your complementary players are.
Absolutely.
And, I think of like the 2015 game, for example, Vince, when Notre Dame and USC played in 2015. And yes, Will Fuller goes off, makes a big play, early in the game. CJ Prosise goes off. But then you had like EQ blocking a punt for a touchdown, right? You had Amir Carlisle had some clutch plays in that game. Josh Adams comes off the bench, rips off a 26-yard run, to help set up a touch, to get him inside the 10 and set up a touchdown. You had some of your complementary players stepped up in that game as well. When you think about that 2015 game, when you think of the 2019 game, who were your stars for you in the 2019 game when you beat USC? I mean, Chase had a nice game against them, 3 catches for 47 yards. Cole Kmet had a nice game, 6 catches for 61 yards. But the star of that game was 2 dudes. Tony Jones Jr. just goes off in that game, 176 yards. And then this cat named Braden Lindsey, who hadn't really done a whole lot that year, comes off and rips off a 51-yard reverse for a touchdown, right? So it's in a game like this that you're complementary players. 2018 out at USC. They're doing everything they can to take Chase Claypool and Miles Boykin out of the game. Everything they can. So who steps up and dominates in the first half? Chris Fink gets 100 yards in the first half. Like, who predicted that going into that game? All right. So to win a game like this, Vince, it can't just be your stars playing like stars. You also need to get your complementary guys to step up and have a role. Now, 2 things. Number 1, you've got to give them opportunities as coaches to make those plays.
Yep.
And number 2, when those opportunities come, because it may just be like a throw. Braden Lindsey may get 1 touch. He only got 2 touches in that game in 2019. But one of them went for 51-yard touchdown. He may only get 2 touches again this game, but he's got to make them count. Mitchell Evans may only get 1 target in this game, but make it count. And I know that there's a complimentary player for you that you think needs to be a big part of the game plan and could be and somebody just put it in the chat too, Vince. He's right online with you. I know there's a player in your head, Vince, that you're like, if you use him properly, this is how you go out there and roll this game to complement your dude. Because the dudes are Audric and Logan. We all know that.
Absolutely.
Whether you think they should or shouldn't, doesn't matter. They are.
That's what this season has been, right? Those are the 2 dudes, and the complementary back that Notre Dame has right now is Chris Tyree. Chris Tyree is still going to be one of, if not the fastest guy on the field whenever he steps on.
He is the fastest guy on the field. Yes.
So you need to utilize him properly, whether that's in 21 personnel, whether it's in 31 personnel that we saw a little bit of last week. Look, USC is not even going to their minds are going to explode when 3 running backs who are all playmakers get on the field at the same time, right? That's when you need to utilize Chris Tyree. You got to get him moving. You got to put him in the slot. You got to put him in the backfield. You got to put him in motion. You've got to utilize Chris Tyree. And God forbid if they happen to kick the ball to him in a kickoff. I mean, I'm hoping that they give him an opportunity because I could see him doing something special in the return game too. But Chris Tyree is a huge X factor for me in this game because at the beginning of the year, we were begging for him to be used properly. They kind of did it there in the middle, and then he fell off again.
And it worked.
And it kind of fell off. And now they kind of brought him back, and they're starting to use him again. You have to utilize your weapons.
We did it against Clemson and BC, to your point, Vince.
Yes.
I mean, Clemson getting him outside with the little now screens and things like that, the little swings. Bingo.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. You have to get him involved because he is a mismatch nightmare on whoever lines up across from him. He's going to win that matchup. So whether it's a reverse, whether it's a jet, whether it is a wheel, whatever the case may be, you need to get 25 involved in the game plan. 7 and 3, they're going to get their touches. They're going to be 100%. Great. They're going to do their thing.
We already talked about them in point 2, whether we said their names or not. The run game doesn't thrive if Audric and Logan aren't going off.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, you're not rushing for 250 yards on USC without Logan and Audric going off. That's a given. Those guys are givens. You need them to do their thing.
Yep.
But it's about that compliment and we saw this against Clemson. Once they started putting Tyree in the game, he had the little swing pass, he had the little now screen, and all of a sudden when he was out there, Clemson was like, we got to pay attention to that dude a little bit. And all of a sudden you're running inside zone and duo right inside of him and you're gashing them.
Exactly.
Right? And running some RPOs with him, or if they want to still crowd the box and you're pulling that sucker, getting out, throwing in Michael Mayer's lead blocking for him, or Mitchell Evans's lead blocking for him, depending on your personnel group. So it's about using him to then open up more room for Logan and Audric as well. And you're using his speed to make plays. It's both.
Yep.
It's got to be both. And that's going to be the key for me in this game, Vince. And I think you nail it with that. Because we were talking like, I'm like complimentary players, and Vince is like Chris Tyree. It's Chris, you know what I mean? But it's him. It's Mitchell Evans. It's Jaden Thomas. It's Braden Lindsey.
You name a wide receiver, they're a complimentary piece in this offense. I mean, they just
Deion Colsey, Tobias Merriweather, like those guys have to step up and make plays when they're given a chance. And it may only be one throw. And, Deion Colsey got one throw last week. That's it.
Huge third down.
Made him count. He got 2 targets against Navy. Made him count.
Yeah.
Tobias Merriweather got 2 targets against Stanford. Made him count. Right? I mean, that's going to be the key. And then schematically, using those guys as, okay, we know they're going to target Mayer here. Let's do this with Mayer and Diggs or Audric to then open up something for somebody else. That's going to be a key.
Yes, no question about it.
No
question. You have we always talk about stars being stars. That's absolutely accurate, and they're going to have to be. But you also have to use your stars to get the complementary pieces, those touches, and getting those guys involved. You have to,
because there's two risks. There's 2 dangers for a game plan. One is you're so dependent on your stars that if they get shut down, you've got nothing to go to. Right? That's danger number 1. Danger number 2 is you overly decoy them. You know what I mean? Where you're using them a little too much. Like, okay, I get the decoy stuff, but you got to still get your dude the ball.
Absolutely.
It's that happy medium of, yes, Michael Mayer is going to be the focal point of this game plan. So is Audric Estime. So is Logan Diggs. But as part of that, there are going to be times where we get them thinking that this is coming, but we're coming with this to create a big play. And those are or a key third down conversion, right? Like we may not hear Jaden Thomas's name mentioned but twice in this game, but it's a 3rd and 5 conversion and 3rd and 6 conversion, and that's it. Well, that's going to be key. That's going to be important, and those are going to be the things that we say. We may only hear Mitchell Evans' name once, but it's he got that great seal block, because it's not just pass game.
Right. He needs
that
to be
great seal block on the edge where Logan bounces it out because he blocks Tooley on the edge. All of a sudden, Logan can bounce it and go for that big play. Or Jaden Thomas gets that great downfield block because he's been blocking his butt off in the second half. Remember how critical we were of him back in early in the season for his blocking? Because it was like, dude, does he even want to be out there?
Right.
Now you look at him now and you watch him the last month in the run game, and it's like you almost kind of feel like he gets happier. He doesn't. No receiver does. But the way he plays, he's happier when they call a run play because he's like, okay, yeah. That's not what's going through his head. It's just, but that's what they're asking him to do. Marcus Freeman said this, like whether it's blocking or catching or whatever, we're asking these guys to take pride in everything that they do and understand how important it is. And Jaden has embraced that. And his downfield blocking has been really good. So whether it's him blocking a corner in the end zone and Chris Tyree cuts in front of him for a big play, Mitchell Evans sealing the outside, Holden Stace getting open on a 3rd and 5 for a big play. I mean, all those things are going to just one play here, one play there, 2 plays here, 2 plays there from your complementary players. And all of a sudden, USC has no answers.
It has to be a team win. I mean, it has to be team success for this.
Yep, absolutely. Number 4. At the end of the day, a lot of this stuff doesn't work if Drew Pine doesn't play well. And look, I don't need Drew Pine to play like he did against North Carolina in this game. If he does, it's a rout. I mean, it's
Agreed.
Over. Agreed. Right? I mean, if he comes out and completes, what was he? I'm just going to pull this up real quick. His numbers were just absurd in that game. I think he was like 71%, and he had 71% with a couple drops, if I remember correctly. But he goes 24 of 34 for 289 yards, or even if he plays like he did against BYU, 22 of 28 for 262. If he plays like that, it's a wrap. I mean, it's a wrap. I mean, USC has no chance. I'm not predicting that or anticipating that or saying he has to play that way for them to win. What he needs to be is sort of a middle of the road between BC and Navy.
First half Navy. Yeah.
So first half Navy, first quarter BC.
Yeah.
Right. Like he goes 9 of 12 for 111 yards in the first quarter against BC. And that success, backs BC off, right? We need to see that Drew Pine hit the backs when they're open. Go through your progressions. Don't be afraid to take a check down. It's okay to take a check down and if those guys are wide open, check it down. Let Audric run over some cornerback, right? It's just play within the system, right? That's the key. I think sometimes Drew tries to force stuff like I got to go make a play here. No, you don't. You don't need to force that great out throw to Mayer. Just get the ball in the check down, right? Like just take your opportunities there, and then he'll get a couple chances on the perimeter to make a play, and that's fine. Make those, like the sprint out, the roll out to Colsey. Those are all great, but those aren't as effective, Vince, if you're also not taking the check down on 3rd and 10 and letting them go. If you're not being consistent, keeping your depth in the pocket, don't rush, don't lock in on guys. Go take what their defense is going to give you. If he can be kind of that guy, first half Navy, first quarter BC for 4 quarters, then Notre Dame will win. I really believe that. And it's not asking that's not world beater stuff. That's just USC is going to play single man coverage. They did it against UCLA, and they basically said, your receivers are going to have to beat us. Well, if they did that to UCLA, they're definitely going to do that to Notre Dame because Notre Dame doesn't have a Jake Bobo, running around a receiver. Now, you could argue that Jake Bobo is their Michael Mayer, and that'd be a fair thing to say, for how UCLA does it, but they're not going to respect Notre Dame's receivers at all, nor should they really. I mean, if you're talking
what
about
gives you the reason to,
what you got to do to stop Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So in that instance, Vince, Drew's got to take, if you see Braden Lindsey one-on-one and that guy's, playing off coverage, especially, buddy, just hit your drop and let her rip. I mean, that's really it. Take that little 5-yard outcut of that 5-yard hitch when they're playing bail coverage or off coverage, because their safeties are going to be thinking run game, 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 run game. And if Tommy's going to scheme some stuff up, I think, to take advantage of that, Drew's got to hit it. That's the key. Drew's got to hit it. And if he can, then this offense is going to roll. I believe that. If he doesn't, then they're going to sputter and they're going to struggle. Vince.
I agree with everything that you just said. And just to put a finer point on his play. But I just want to add something. I want to add as an addition to, look, USC has 18 interceptions on the year, right? They're good at getting interceptions. He can't be careless with the football.
Right.
Look, I still want him to take chances. And that chance may turn into an interception. Okay. It's possible. But you can't be reckless with the football. And I don't, at the chance of sounding like Brian Kelly, I want him to take care of the football. Okay. I need him to take care of the football and not turn it over. Right. Everything you said is accurate. he needs to do all of those things. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. He just needs to be Drew Pine. Just be Drew Pine. Don't be bad Drew Pine. You don't have to be Heisman Drew Pine. Just be Drew Pine. You're going to be fine. You move the football. You lean on the run game, a little play action, all of that. You just can't turn the football over in the air. Can't have the tip passes, right? You can't give the opportunities for USC to ball hawk and get those interceptions, because that's just going to put the defense in a bad spot.
The concern for me, Vince, is him getting in the pocket and then doing that climb stuff, getting the ball tipped, and a linebacker safety comes underneath and picks it off.
Right.
If he gets picked off because on 3rd and 6 at midfield, he takes a shot down the field to Braden Lindsey and it gets picked.
All right. I have no problem. That's as good as a punt.
Sure.
That's
as long as you tackle the guy, sure, it is what it is. What you can't do is you're driving and he rushes a throw and it gets picked in the end zone or it gets batted down or even worse, you give them a short, or just as worse, you give them a short field because you're throwing 25, you're rushing, you're panicking, and you get the ball out too quick, or you predict, or that something's going to happen. Instead of reading, you don't predict, you got to read. All those things are going to be keys for Drew Pine. We're not asking him to look like Jimmy Clausen. Just stay within the offense. Get the ball where it needs to go.
Yep.
Manage it. Let your dudes be dudes, because Notre Dame has dudes.
Yes.
That's the thing. Just
use
them. Trust your dudes. Trust Braden Lindsey.
Yes.
Just
get it where it needs to be.
Trust Jaden Thomas. Right. Yes. Trust Kurskye Reed. Trust Aldrich on the swing route that he's going to catch it and run some dude over. Trust Mitchell Evans. Give him a chance. If Drew's on top of his game, we've seen him be that way. We saw him that way against Carolina. We saw him against BYU. We saw him the first half against USC or BC or Navy. We saw him that way in the first quarter against BC. We have seen it. We're not asking him to do anything we haven't seen him do this year.
Exactly.
Just be that guy for 4 quarters. And if he does that, they're going to win this game, in my opinion.
Yep. Completely agree with you.
Number 5, Vince, is a bit of a big picture thing too, and it's simple. In a game like this, with this magnitude, against an offense like this, the offense has to answer. They're going to have to answer. That's going to be a big part of this game. Anything you can do, I can do better. It's got to be the mantra for the Notre Dame offense this week.
Absolutely. No question about that. And people, I said that you need to score on all your drives and how sometimes field goals are okay. Sometimes field goals are okay, because at least you're matching a score with a score. Okay. Now, you can't match their touchdowns with field goals every time. I'm not an idiot. I know that 7 is more than 3. Okay. But you still need to put the pressure on USC to be like, oh, wow, they just went down and scored after we scored. Okay, we got to go down and score.
Yeah.
You've got to keep that pressure on them.
You can't let them keep gaining on or pulling away from you.
And again, how do you get that field goal? Are you smash mouthing them all the way down the field, and then you kick a field goal, you get some points out of the deal? Did the defense get you a turnover in the red zone and you stalled out and you had to kick a field goal? Not all field goals are the same. Okay. Right. I will say that. All right. You need to not give their offense all kinds of confidence that, hey, we're going to score. Our defense is going to get the ball back. We're going to score again. It can't be that way. You have to match a score with a score. Absolutely have to.
Right. Yeah. And I think you nailed a part there, Vince. It's kind of a little different than what I was referring to, but I think is just as important as well. What I was referring to was when they score, you've got to answer.
Right.
I think you nailed a point too. Is like, if the defense gives you a short field, you can't settle for a field goal.
Right.
You got to punch that sucker in. Right. And if you go on a 12-play drive where you took 7 minutes off the clock and you got to do a field goal and that was an answer, all right, cool. Right. Mm-hmm. But I think that's another one too, is answering when the defense has success. They give you a short field. The special teams blocks a punt. That's got to be 7, baby. Right. That's got to be 7. Mm-hmm. And those are going to be big parts of this game. Big parts of this game. So, like, let's say you go on a 14-play drive and you score and you go up 3-0, and then all of a sudden, like we saw last week, missed opportunity in the red zone, had to settle for field goal. Next drive, defense steps up. Benjamin Morrison gets a big pick. It's got to be 7. And it's got to be 7.
It was.
And it was.
And it was.
And it was. Because now all of a sudden they're down 2 possessions as opposed to 2 field goals where, okay, fine, 2 field goals.
It's a touchdown.
And that's what hurt Notre Dame against Clemson in the 2020 ACC title game. I mean, Notre Dame came out, their first 3 drives, they moved it into Clemson territory, but they missed a field goal, made a field goal, and I think had a turnover on downs or something. I think is how that's – and next thing you know, Trevor hits 2 plays and you're down. And it's like, man, you've been out playing them for like a quarter and a half, and all of a sudden 2 plays, you're down. Can't be that.
Right.
It's got to be we're up 17-0 because they had some turnovers. And then when Caleb gets hot, which he will.
It's going to happen.
Yes, he
it's
will.
It's going to be frustrating, but
then,
it's going to happen.
And and this goes back to the start early thing, start fast thing. These two things kind of tie together because answering is sometimes, to your point, Vince, is when your defense does something well, you're answering and responding with points. If you put distance in between you and USC, which is not easy,
right,
they are a very good comeback team, as we've seen all year. They've been down before. They were down 14-0 against UCLA.
Nope.
And that includes USC having twice on their USC's first 2 drives against UCLA. They went right down the field and were in scoring range. They had a turnover on downs in the red zone. Then they missed a field goal in the red zone. UCLA comes down, scores 2 touchdowns, and you're 14-0. They didn't panic at all. And including one of them was because Caleb threw a terrible pick, which he rarely does. UCLA goes down 14-0. What does UCLA do or USC do? Comes right back down and scores.
Right.
The kid's not going to panic.
No.
But what I do think you can do is if you can put some distance there offensively, you can then adjust your game plan to make sure that they're not getting the quick scores.
Right.
And you can start doing some things and maybe you can take some chances to maybe then force a mistake to where you can really put them away. You can't do that when you're down 14-0.
Right.
And so that's going to be a big key for the offense too.
There will be no lead that is safe, by halftime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, even if Notre Dame takes the 2-3 touchdown lead at halftime, you will not see me like, woohoo! All right, everybody, tune in for the post-game show. It's going to be a good one. Like, USC has the firepower to come back, and they have proven that they can come back. They've proven it, right? So that's the big thing. So, yes, Notre Dame needs to start fast, but they also need to continue and not fall off the table in the second half. That's
answering. That's answering. If you're up, let's say you're up 24-10 at halftime, and boy, you're feeling great about yourselves. USC comes out that first drive of the next half, and they go right down the field and score. It's 24-17. That's what happened against Oklahoma State. Remember, Notre Dame is up 28-7. Oklahoma State goes right down the field and scores 28-14. And Oklahoma State gets the ball to start the second half. They go right down the field and score, and the Notre Dame offense did not answer. If you go back down and score again to make it 35-21, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're good here, right? But they didn't answer that, and it allowed Oklahoma State to come back and score. And that was against an offense not nearly as good as this one.
Right.
So, now again, different team, different coaching staff and all that. The point is the same, though. It's that answer thing.